Hello everyone and welcome to episode 11 of the Aviation Spiders podcast. I am your host, Colin, and I hope you all enjoyed my episode 10 with Durfum. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that interview, and I think he really did enjoy talking about, with him being a weapons system officer and his love of aviation and photography. So this week is a very special week because my guest this week was recommended by one of my listeners. The goal I set out to do to get people involved with this podcast and send me people has paid off. And we'll get to know my guest here in a little bit. But before that, we're changing the format up a little bit. So I decided that this part would be dedicated to any listener questions that anybody may have about camera setup or just general stuff. But I also wanted to do something a little bit different. What I think I'm going to start doing is, when the week of this episode airs, I found some days in aviation history that I think is interesting. So since this episode is airing the week of September 6th through September 12th, I thought it'd be fun to do what happened on this day in aviation history. So I found some interesting days or events that happened on certain days that landed on the week of this podcast. So let's start September 6th. In 1893, Claire Chennault, probably mispronounced his last name, but he was the American pilot famous for commanding the Flying Tigers, or the AVGs, during World War II, was born. In 1940, the first production Douglas Scout Bomber, or the SBD dive bomber, was delivered to the U.S. Navy. This aircraft was later known as the Dauntless. 1976, Viktor Belenko of the Soviet Union defects to the West, landing the MiG-25 Foxbat in Japan, which was later reverse engineered by the Americans. In 1983, the Soviet Union admits to shooting down Korean Air Flight 007, and they stated that the pilot did not know it was a civilian aircraft when it violated Soviet airspace. In 2006, Frontier operated a new airline called Lynx Aviation, and for those that lived in the U.S. and remember it, they used to fly the Dash 8 Q400. Alright, moving on to September 7th. In 1909, the U.S. Army's first aerodrome, an airfield or an airport, is established in College Park, Maryland. In 1940, Hermann Goering orders the Luftwaffe to stop targeting British airfields and start attack London itself. And as you will find out in the interview, my grandmother was there for the Blitz. In 1965, the first flight of the AH-1 Cobra, which would later go on as one of the most proliferated attack helicopter families in the world. 1995, Space Shuttle Endeavour launches on STS-96. And in 1997, on September 7th, the first flight of the F-22 Raptor, it reached 15,000 feet in less than 3 minutes. September 8th, 1927, the Cessna Corporation is established. 1967, NASA launches the Lunar Lander Surveyor 5. It will eventually shoot and transmit 19,049 photographs back to Earth in preparation for the Apollo moon landings. 1997, a lot of sevens in this one. The Boeing 777-300 is rolled out. It will be the longest airliner until the A340-600 beats it in 2001. In 2000, Space Shuttle Atlantis on STS-106 launches for an ISS resupply. September the 9th. 1955, American Airlines, Transworld Airlines, and United Airlines agreed to adopt domestic coach class for transcontinental flights across the United States. In 1966, the Concorde's Rolls-Royce Olympus engines had begun test flights underneath a modified Avro Vulcan bomber. And I did not know the Vulcan was used for the Rolls-Royce Olympus testing. That's pretty cool. 1980, Island Air, a Hawaiian airline, has started operations. In 1994, Space Shuttle Discovery makes its 20th trip to orbit on STS-64. And in 2006, the first flight of the Boeing 747 large cargo freighter. This is also known as the Dreamlifter. September 10th, 1908. Orbital Wright flies 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 15 seconds, becoming one of the longest flights ever at the time. In 1942, the U.S. Army Air Force's Air Transportation Command establishes the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron, known as the WAFs, an organization of civilian women pilots who ferry military aircraft from factories to airfield to free male pilots for combat duty. In 1993, Boeing finishes production of their 1,000th 747 airplane, 26 years after the 747 program was launched. September 12th, 1943, Benito Mussolini was freed from that daring raid by Walter Gerlach and a Friesler Storch. Now, for those that don't know that, you should guys go look that up. It's a pretty interesting story. 1991, Space Shuttle Discovery launches on STS-48 for upper atmospheric research satellite deployment. 1992, Space Shuttle Endeavour launches on STS-47, and it is a Japanese-funded mission. I left the 11th of September last. There are a lot of aviation histories on the 11th of September, but we all know the 11th of September as the 19th anniversary this year of the tragic terrorist attacks that killed 2,977 people in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. You will never forget the lives lost on this day. Anyhow, like I said earlier, my guest was recommended to me by one of my listeners, and I'm so thankful for that. So I can't wait for you guys to hear this interview with Ashley Wallace from Hertfordshire, England. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Alright guys, so this week's guest, we are talking with Ashley Wallace from Hertfordshire, England. And believe it or not, this is my first recommended guest by somebody who listened to the podcast and actually sent me a message and say, hey, I think this guy should come on. So I messaged Ashley and he agreed to come on. So guys, this is what this is meant to do. And so this is awesome. This is the first time I actually get to interview a guest that was recommended. So anyway, Ashley, thank you for coming on and agreeing to do this with me.
No, thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Absolutely, man. So let's just jump right into the questions. So let's get to know you a little bit. So you said you're from Hertfordshire, England, but where did you live at before that, and how did you get into spotting?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hertfordshire, England. I lived in a little village which was about 5 miles from Duxford, which you probably a few listeners might know. Duxford, the Imperial War Museum, home to the flying legends and all the warbirds. So I lived there for about 20 years, I think it was, and then my parents decided to move out of the little village we were in to a little village in Suffolk called Red Lodge, which is about 5-6 miles from RF Mildenhall, so it's quite handy. And then I think we were there. I lived there with my parents for about 3 years before I met my partner, and then I moved back to Hertfordshire. And I now live in a town which is not far away from where I used to previously live.
Oh, that's pretty cool. For those that don't know, my grandmother used to live in England during the war, and she was there during the Blitz and the Little Blitz. So I actually do have a connection to England, and hopefully I will be able to go see my family ancestry and all that stuff over there very, very soon. So how did you get into aviation photography? Because you grew up really close to all these bases. So is that kind of how you got into it?
Yeah. I think the main reason I got it was my parents. Ever since I was, a year I was born, my parents took me to the RAF Milton Air Show, and ever since then it became a yearly event. Obviously went to Duxford, but yeah, Mildenhall was the big show. You know, growing up, that was the show you look forward to every year. It was awesome. Yeah.
So the Imperial War Museum in Duxford, is that where they have that English Electric Lightning that does the taxis and like the high speed runway passes?
No, that's actually based at an airfield. Well, it used to be an airfield in Bruntingthorpe. They had like a collection of old Cold War jets. They had, I think it was 2 Lightnings. They had a Victor, a VC-10, a few Canberras, quite a large collection of, you know, old RAF Cold War jets,
okay.
and they used to taxi run them down the airfield. But I think I don't really know too much about it. But a couple of weeks ago, they've stopped that now, and the Lightnings have actually moved from Bruntingthorpe down to a little airfield in Gloucestershire, I think, in the Cotswolds. And the actual Cold War jet days at Bruntingthorpe, I don't think are going to run anymore.
Oh, that's too bad, man. I've seen some of those videos of them doing that high speed,
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
and all that. And this, being able to, even though it's not able to fly, which honestly it would have been really cool if they were able to get that thing airworthy and fly it to Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's kind of like how they did the 727 a couple of years ago when they ferried it from Payne to Boeing Field.
Yeah. There was actually a time, quite a few years ago now, it must be, 10 years ago, where the Victor did a fast taxi run and it actually got airborne for a fraction of a second. Excuse me. And it literally got a few feet off the ground and he managed to put it down, it popped the chute and it managed to stop. But it, being there and witnessing it, I wasn't, but I've seen videos and it was quite scary. I can imagine the crew would just like, maybe we should just go around, take it around and land it. But they managed to stop themselves. It just came to a halt safely. But it's pretty awesome.
I mean, at what point are you able to like say, okay, we're not going to have enough room to stop, so
exactly,
instead of overrunning and potentially harming somebody on the ground or killing somebody, just let her fly one last time.
Yeah.
God, hopefully I'll be able to see that one day. And I like how England preserves their aviation history, whether it be like, especially like with the Vulcan, how the Vulcan is too expensive to keep flying, but they'll still, fire up and taxi her, and with the Lightnings, especially with the Battle of Britain commemoration.
Oh, the BBMF,
they have the
Battle of Britain Memorial, the memorial flight.
Yeah. Which, man, that's on my bucket list items to see is the Spitfires, the Hurricanes, and the Lancaster do a flyover just in England at this kind of, because this was the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Britain that just started, isn't it? When the time we're recording this, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Well, hopefully one day I'll be able to go over there and see that for sure. But anyway, so how many years then have you been taking photos of airplanes? It sounds like you started at a very, very early age.
Yeah. So, I'm 30 now, and I got my first camera. I stole my mum's compact film camera when I was probably about 8 or 9, and used to just take it around when I was at the shows. And I think the first time I really got into photography was when I was about 12, when I got my first SLR film camera. That was when I became hooked. I went to the shows. I was getting rolls and rolls of film developed, and it was costing me an absolute arm and a leg. But I loved it, and ever since then, it's just grown as a passion. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. And before we started recording, you told me that you actually did some freelance work for combat aircraft.
Yeah,
Right?
that's correct. Yeah, yeah. So I've done a few features for them over the last four years.
That's pretty cool. And also do some other stuff for your actual work that involves you traveling
Yes.
globally.
Yeah. So I'm a school portrait photographer as my day job. I work for an international school photography company, traveling across the world, photographing students in big international schools across the Middle East and Asia. So yeah, so we do quite a few schools in Doha and Qatar, which I actually managed to work and coincide with a magazine feature that I was doing for combat aircraft back in 2018, I think it was, where I had a job in Qatar shooting at a school for about 4 days, and Qatar don't go to school on a Friday. That's their day off. And on the run up to the job, I managed to organise, a lot of work. Organise a visit to Al Udeid Air Base.
Oh, wow.
And I spent a day with the 9th Bomb Squadron on live operations at Al Udeid, which was probably one of my highlights since doing photography. It was awesome. A lot of work. It was very touch and go, even to the day. The morning that I woke up to go and meet the guys out of the base and public affairs and the commander of the 9th at the time. It was very close to not happening, but the commander was just awesome. He, one of the nicest commanders I've ever met. Couldn't do enough for me, and spent a day interviewing the guys and girls on the 9th Expeditionary Bomb Squadron, who were on their 6-month deployment, flying live missions out over Iraq and Syria for Operation Inherent Resolve. And it was just fascinating. It was pretty awesome. Yeah,
that is awesome. And for those that don't know, the 9th Bomb Squadron are B-1 Lancers.
Yeah. So the B-1, the mighty B-1.
Just getting to play with some bones during live combat operations must have been just one of the absolute highlights of your photography career.
I mean, it was a couple of years previous. Back in 2016, I visited Dallas in Texas, and I worked with the 28th Bomb Squadron, and I did a feature on the schoolhouse because obviously the 28th Bomb Squadron is the training squadron, the B-1 training squadron.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a feature on that, made some quite good contacts and good friends, some good B-1 pilot friends, and the public affairs officer at the time, who again was extremely helpful, came over to Fairford 2 years later, I think it was. 2 years later, or a year later, I think it was, on a deployment to Fairford when they sent three or four jets to Fairford in the summer, which sadly ground to a halt because they had an ejection seat issue and the whole fleet were grounded. So they came over, all the jets were grounded, they couldn't do anything. But I still went down. I met the public affairs officer, and we, went out for a drink. And he said, I loved the feature and stuff like this. And then we got onto the subject of Al Udeid, and it all sort of started from there. And then it was just from seeing them training, and students going through the course on the B1, and then going to Al Udeid, which is, live ops, was just fascinating. Seeing them doing their thing for real was amazing. I sort of embedded with the guys and girls from the beginning of the day to the moment they literally taxied was pretty special. Yeah,
That is extremely special. That's a very, I mean, you got to meet them. It's like you kind of like, you kind of quote grew up with them, watching them, train, and then
yeah,
you're their TDY, the first deployment, then actually going to like legitimate combat.
yeah.
And that's something really, really special right there. That's pretty cool,
Yeah,
dude.
so I mean, I think the one of the best things was obviously we went for lunch and we were chatting, and I did a couple of interviews with the guys and girls, and before they went to their mission brief, and then the commander was just like, what kind of shots are you looking for? What is it you want in? Anything that I can do to help, just let me know. And I think the one shot that I wanted, if it was possible, was to get in the cockpit before they launched with the guys in the cockpit going through their pre-flight to get a shot of them, getting ready. And he said, "Yeah, no, we can make that work. And we took a drive out to the jet. The jet was running. The two Wizzos and the two pilots were there waiting. They boarded the jet, and then for 5 minutes, the commander said, "You're free to go up." And so I managed to go into a running B1, which was full of ordnance, if you like.
Yeah.
5 minutes before they taxied to fly their mission over Iraq. It was pretty special.
Wow, that's something that will probably never happen
Exactly,
again.
yeah.
That's one of those. It's like, you know what? Go big or go home. And he said yes, and it's like, make every single frame and every single second count when you're up there.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that, on the lead up to it, emails and phone calls, what are you looking for? And I literally just said, look, this is what I'm hoping for. I'm not going to expect everything. You just have to, the worst they can say is no. And it just happened that the commander at the time, who's now left, he works in the Pentagon now, but he was just so helpful, and he said, yeah, no, we can do it. And that moment will stay with me for a long time. I don't think I'll ever get that chance to do that in that environment again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was awesome.
You just made a lot of people jealous by saying that story. I'm going to say that right
I think
now.
I kind of had to say it because it's one of it's the biggest highlight, I think, for me. I've been flying and stuff like that, and flown in C-130s, and I don't know what it was about that. There was something, me being an absolute huge fan of the B1. That was something that is as close as I'll get to flying in one.
Yeah. Well, you're now you're going to have to come up with another story when we reach the telespotting story question. So keep thinking about another one, because I want to ask you another one. But yeah, I'm about to say, if you have that sort of story, I think we'll be okay. But something else. But so another couple questions. What do you consider your home airport, and then what other hobbies do you have besides aviation photography, or just in your case, your career?
So I like to indulge in a little bit of astrophotography. I've been doing that quite a bit throughout this lockdown period. I've been photographed the Milky Way and stuff like that. Other hobbies, obviously I've got 2 children, so they take up quite a bit of my time. The family, spending time with them, and just friends and spotting is great. You can go out, you meet your friends while you're out there. You kind of have to balance it between those and your family and and your work. So, but I can't think of anything else really. I collect a lot of patches, coins. I guess that's a interest and a hobby as well.
I did the same thing.
It gets expensive. And it's a very slippery slope. Yeah, so I've got quite a few.
What would you consider your home airport?
So my home airport, my nearest air base is RF Mildenhall and RF Lakenheath. They're about 40 minutes from me. My parents actually live like 10 minutes away from Mildenhall. So obviously there you've got the KC-135s, you've got the CV-22s, the Ospreys, MC-130, Commando 2s, and obviously you get a lot of visiting aircraft that transit through. You don't get as much as you used to, turn back the clock 10 years, but you still get a few nice gems pass through every now and again.
Yeah, with the bases in Germany slowly starting to wind down, you might see more of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that there was time where Milner was going to close. It was rumoured that it was going to close, and but apparently they've pulled that, and it's now due to stay open. With stuff pulling out of Germany, it could start to get busy again, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in this day and age right now, where we're just hoping for something. Anyway, man, so let's move it on. So so you talked about your amazing story at the B1s and all that, and you do freelance photography for not just one of the most highly recognized aviation magazines in the world, but for your career. So what type of camera do you use, and what have you currently used in the past?
So yeah, I've always been a Nikon guy. I started with a Nikon film, 35mm film SLR, and then from there I got my first digital SLR, which was a Nikon D70, I think it was. And just my camera bag's grown from then, really. Kit's improved over the years. You upgrade, your lenses get better. So now I'm actually shooting with a D7100, which is about 6 years old now, and she's still going strong. And I've also recently been shooting with a Nikon D750, which is a full frame. So I have the sort of the best of both worlds. I've got a crop body and a full frame body, which is quite handy, really. Certain area or certain places you go, and I've got a range of lenses they range from a 8mm fisheye lens. I think there's a Samyang 8mm fisheye lens, 14 to 24 f2.8 Nikon wide angle, which is awesome.
Dang.
It's a nice bit of glass. And then from there I've got a 24 to 70 2.8 Nikon again, and then 70 to 200 2.8, and then a 200 to 500 Nikon f5.6, which is one of the best telephoto lenses I've ever bought. It's just incredible.
I agree. I used my dad's D7100 at Aviation Nation last year, and I actually borrowed my buddy's 200 to 500.
Impressed
with that, and I was thoroughly impressed because I was using the first day there because my Pentax K3 crapped out. Like the autofocus motor just went, and it just didn't want to do anything. So I used my Pentax K30 with my Sigma 50 to 500, and it wasn't doing that great. It has some shutter issues, so it's really good for single shot, not for continuous. And then I brought my dad's D7100, so I just wanted a camera that I could use. And I already knew at this point I'm going to invest in a new setup. All signs pointed I was going to go towards Nikon, but I didn't. So I went to Canon. But man, he let me borrow that lens, and that second day of the show, I got some of the best shots I've ever got at an air show because now I actually had a camera set up that actually worked at an air show. Like the aperture, there wasn't a depth of field issue. The autofocus was strong. The images were sharp. That Sigma lens was great, but it was a soft lens, so just like really impressed.
It's awesome. I mean,
with that lens,
I used to have a 300 fixed 2.8 before I bought the 200 to 500, and I found it very restrictive. When you're at certain places and locations, aircraft would fill the frame pretty quickly, and you had nowhere to go. It's 300 mil, and that's it. So when
Yeah.
Nikon announced this 200 to 500, it was kind of, wow, okay, a big range, 200 to 500 mil. It's
Yeah.
got to be expensive. And then when they announced the price, I was like, wow, that's a lot of lens for the money. And I was very skeptical about how good it would be, and after watching photographer reviews on the lens and stuff, they were just blown away with it, especially wildlife photographers. And you can kind of gauge how good a lens is by a wildlife photographer saying it's a good lens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bit the bullet and bought one, and it's just been incredible. It's incredibly sharp, and the depth of field is amazing, especially when you're shooting wildlife. Yeah, and when it's cold and crisp, when you get the light, the nice light in the winter, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, man, that is a lot of lens for the money, and if people are looking for Nikon or looking at a telephoto lens, and you're doing some really distant photography, check that one out. It's worth your time. I mean, even Tamron and Sigma, their quality has vastly improved over the years. So I mean, there's a lot of options coming up in this lenses right now too.
I think Sigma brought out their sort of equivalent at the same time, which is it a 160 to 600?
Oh yeah,
I think it is a 160 to 600. I think it is.
I think it was a 60 to 600.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, it was a 600 millimeter max focal length, which is absolutely absurd for a super
obviously
lens.
Nikon have to, come up with something to compete, and they come up with that, and it's just been amazing.
Yeah, Canon came out with a 100 to 500 lens. However, it's a higher aperture and it's only for the mirrorless.
Yeah.
The mirrorless mount, which I really hope they bring the aperture down and bring it to the EF mount, because I would love to have an extra 100 millimeters on the 5D,
sure.
especially with a full frame.
Yeah, definitely.
You can.
Yeah, having a full frame,
helps.
You need that a little bit extra, don't you?
Yeah, Red Flag 20-3, I was using a 1.4 extender, and I've noticed that when I usually shoot at an f-stop 7.1 on with the 100 to 400, I put that one on, and the f-stop at the focal length I'd be using jumped to 8, and that was the minimal, and then the images came out soft. So I was just going, the second day I went without the extender, and our images were sharp and all that, but it's, first time using that, just experimenting with it.
Yeah, I think I used to shoot with a 1.7 times converter with my 70-200, and I think I just had a really good converter, and I never really had any problems, but I have heard, people having issues with the focusing, the images are not that crisp. Obviously, you're putting another bit of glass in between your mirror and your lens, aren't you? So your sensor and your lens. So it's going to be a little bit. It's not going to be as crisp as if you were shooting without a converter, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But yeah, equipment and lenses and camera, they're just getting better and better all the time, and it's hard to keep up. It really is. And I found
it really is
a combination which works, and I've no sort of need to change at the minute. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, that same thing with me is, I got my setup, and I plan on using this setup for forever, until something happens, which I hope it doesn't, but anyway, man, so let's start moving into the spotting stuff. So what is your favorite airport and airplane to spot?
My favorite airport or airbase to spot is probably RF Fairford, especially in the winter months. It's the light. If you get the movements, we have regular bomber deployments there throughout the year. So if you get the weather and you get the movements, there's just no other place which is better. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
We've currently got 6 B-52s at Fairford at the minute. And when they're here, they can fly 4 ships each day up to 4 ships each day, which is
wow.
an awesome sight to see. And if you get the weather, it's just awesome. You know, the images, the lights in the right place. Yeah, there's so many different locations you can shoot at. I can't think of anywhere else really that's as good, and I enjoy shooting at. You know, Mildenhall's only 40 minutes up the road from me. However, Fairford's 2.5 hours away, but I'd rather go there to shoot at the moment, just because it's the light, the types of aircraft that are there. It's great.
So what would you say would be your favorite aircraft to go out in
It's
spot?
got to be the B1. Has to be. The B1 is it's always been a favourite of mine. You know, it looks incredible. It sounds even better. You know, everyone should at least experience, or everyone should experience a B1 departure at least once in their life. You know, there's nothing out there
I agree.
like it. It's just pure awesomeness.
And you have to experience a night launch
with
the B1 if you're able to.
That is actually one thing which I haven't. Well, I have. I have experienced it when one's departed Mildenhall before, but I'm really hoping to get out to Red Flag at some point in the future and experience one from there, because I've seen the videos and it just looks awesome.
It was awesome. I was there on the penultimate day of Red Flag, and unfortunately that week they had 4 B1s. All of them broke, and then they fixed one, and then one launched during the day sortie, got him. Then he launched again at night, and it was the most ungodly sound I've ever heard in my life. Just had this, seeing 4 F-16 engines, or 1 B1 engine, as I was corrected by a B1 pilot, fly over you in the middle of the night. It's just, it was earth-shattering is what it was. But the second day, we moved down a little bit to get them taking off with the mountain in the background at Nellis. So we moved down there, and I told the guys, like, dude, I have a feeling they're going to flex on departure. And they haven't flexed the whole entire flag. And for those people that don't know what I'm talking about, have you ever seen the photos at Nellis of the aircraft topside? That's a flex departures, or departure they have to fly for noise abatement over parts of the city. Believe it or not, it is noise abatement. And we're down there, and I'm like, dude, I got a feeling they're going to flex. They're going to do that. They haven't flexed all flags, not going to happen. And guess what happened? Both of them flexed. And I just going...
Was this in the dark? Or was this in...
It was during the day.
During the day. Awesome.
And they went home after that.
Awesome.
So, what was actually really cool, though, is I can't complain, because I actually did get them low, kind of at a little start, like starting the bank, little top side of them on burner with the mountain in the background. So I can't complain about that. Even though it was backlit a little bit, I still got a pretty awesome picture of the bones. Pretty, with the mountain.
Awesome.
So, what is your favorite airplane then? Just in general.
Favorite airplane? It's got to be the B1. Has to be still. Yeah, in general. Yeah, followed by the Eagle. I do like the F-15.
Now, which Eagle?
I'm going to say the C model.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll respect that.
Yeah, the C model. We've got, obviously we have the 493rd Fighter Squadron at Lakenheath with their F-15Cs, and I think I much prefer the C to the E. Yeah.
Well, I will respectfully, I will respect your opinion. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, it's always nice to see the Legacy Eagle. We just had a couple of them in Boise a few weeks ago from Louisiana, and it's just really, really cool and really nice seeing the C model every so often up here. Yeah. Granted, as people know, I absolutely adore and I love the Strike Eagle and all that, but it's just always nice to see the legacy Eagles without the CFTs and into single seaters and all that.
Yeah.
And just the light gray paint jobs, and just seeing 104 to 0.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean the Strike Eagle was an awesome jet as well. It's just an amazing jet.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I do prefer the C. But I prefer my big aircraft. I'm a lover of the big stuff. I love my bombers, the B-52, the B-2, B-1. I love all the tankers as well. The KC-10 is another favourite.
I do love me some KC-10,
the tri-holder or the three-holder, which is it's a great. I flew on one actually out of Travis a couple of years ago, and that thing has got some power.
Yeah.
It was the first time I've flown on a DC-10 compared to any other plane I've flown on. That thing can climb.
Yeah, I've been on one of the 10 tanker fire bombers a few times at NIFC, National Interagency Fire Center.
Have you really?
And yeah, I've been on tanker. It's tanker 911 and new tanker 910. I got to go on both. No, it was tanker 912. Tanker 912.
Okay.
I got to go on, and it's literally. So you go up the stairs, and the cockpit is a straight DC-10. We're talking a flight engineer, pilot, co-pilot, the whole classic cockpit, which is absolutely awesome to see. And then you turn right, and you'll realize there's like one row of first class seats, and that's it. It's everything is a hollowed out airplane, and they have some of the overhead bins still there for like storage of like tools and other stuff. And then they have like a little staircase that goes down to where the tanks are at for the fire retardant. But otherwise, it's a hollowed out DC-10.
Wow.
And it is so cool because they actually bolted down a picnic table. That's like just a picnic table, like right in the front of the jet. I have some photos on my Instagram page. You guys want to go check that out of the DC-10s. But my God, that was some of the coolest experiences ever. The fire bombers I love in general to spot. But so I'm taking you're more of a military aviation photographer over a civilian aviation
I do shoot
guy.
a little bit of civil. Yeah, I do. I spot or shoot at Heathrow. I spent quite a few days over the winter at Heathrow, mainly to try and catch the BA 100 special liveries.
Oh, yeah.
The 747s that have got their special liveries. So I spent.
I never got to see them, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Never got to.
It's gutting. It's absolutely gutting that they've gone. And I've managed to get all of them, luckily.
Oh, good.
But yeah, so during the winter months, I kind of spend a couple of days at Heathrow here and there. But military is where my real passion lies. Yeah.
So, what's your favorite British built aircraft then, if you have one?
What, flying today or in general?
Just in general.
I really miss. Oh, it's not actually. I really miss the Harrier, the GR9 and the GR7.
Yeah.
That was a shame when they got rid of them. But yeah, I mean, flying today, there's not an awful lot to choose from.
Unfortunately, like really after the Tornado retired,
the Tornado was a favourite. Yeah, I think that was one of the last of the true British fighter jets that the RF flew. Two afterburners, just amazing. I spent quite a lot of time at RF Marham during their last few months of operations before they retired. Obviously, they painted 3 Tornadoes in special markings. So you had 31 Squadron Gold Stars with a special tail, and then you had 9 Squadron, which had a bat on the tail, and then you had the GR4 retirement scheme, if you like, which was an all-over green camo retro scheme, which looked stunning. They really did a good job on it, and really I feel they really gave it a good send off. not only for the crews
Absolutely.
and but for the whole aviation enthusiast community. It was, it's
Yeah.
really appreciated by everyone, because it's happened in the past. The planes just slip away and they don't sort of make a big fuss about it. But with the Tornado, the commander at Marham at the time really wanted to give it a good send off, and it was great.
That they did. They gave it one hell of a send off. And I've seen some of the low level
Yeah,
photos that a couple of my friends got. Now I don't think it was through the loop. It was through a different low level area, which I actually do not know what it is, but I've seen the photos from there, which are absolutely just stunning to
yeah.
see
So
them.
they also
I
fly
guess,
through the Lake District, which is
mm-hmm.
north in Yorkshire, and obviously the Mach Loop was one of the places they used to fly. But
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of
unfortunately, that's
not the place
sort
it used
of
to be.
no longer, if you like.
Yeah.
They find other places to go and
Oh yeah.
do their low level training.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, man. So, do you have a least favorite airplane to take a photo of, or do you just love all your airplanes in general?
least favorite. I shoot most planes really. I mean, I chase a lot of things that I like, but I won't sort of go out of my way to photograph something I don't like. If you know what I mean. So,
Mm-hmm.
the Hawk, it's kind of boring compared to your T-45s. Yeah, it's not the most glamorous looking plane. It's not the most interesting looking plane, I guess, or aircraft. But yeah, I kind of shoot everything and anything. If I'm there and it
Yeah.
passes the lens, I'll photograph it.
That's fair. So, what is the rarest aircraft you have ever taken a photo
Oh,
of?
the rarest aircraft I've ever shot. Well, probably it's actually out at Yuma in Arizona. Actually, we were there in
Is it a B1?
no,
A B1
no,
U?
it's not a B1. No, it was in 2009. We went over. Me and three friends went out and we spent 2 weeks on the west coast, and we dropped by Yuma after a couple of days at El
Mm-hmm.
Centro, and on the other side of the military side of Yuma, there's like a civilian area where a lot of light aircraft are kept. And
Yeah.
we're driving down the road and we look over and we see this red and white or orange and white plane which looked very navy looking. And we sort of stopped and we had a look, and it turned out it was a US Navy O2A Pelican, which
Oh wow.
the Marines or the Navy and the Marines use as, I'm not actually sure what it does, but I think there's only one or two that they have, and this happened to be sat in amongst all these Cessna 172s. So we went over to this hut and we knocked on the door, and there was a guy came out, and I said, "Oh, is there any chance we can go out and photograph that orange and white plane sitting over there?" And he said, "Yeah, come out." Took us down to the ramp and we photographed this O2A Pelican, which usually they have a prop on the front and a prop on the rear because it's a push-pull system.
Mm-hmm.
But this one only had a prop on the rear, with an extended nose, which had some kind of radar or something inside the nose. And it's actually belongs to MAWTS1, whatever that is. But I think they use it during their WTI exercises.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure on exactly what it does, because not a lot of people have seen it or photographed it. So that probably has to be one of my rarest things I've photographed.
Yeah, I literally just Googled it while you were saying that, and I was going, like, that's a Vietnam airplane. Then I looked up again, I'm going, okay, that is definitely counts as one of the rarest things that in existence.
I think
So I think
the actual squadron or the unit that it's assigned to, I believe it has a I think, I can't think what the other plane is that it has, but it has another aircraft. Oh, I can't remember what it is now. But yeah, it's got two types. It's got the O2 and then another type of aeroplane that they use during these WTI exercises. And
Wow.
yeah, they're pretty rare, I think. I'm not sure if it's still flying, actually, because that was quite a few years ago that I photographed it.
But still, though, just being able to see that aircraft in general is absolutely probably the only time you will probably ever see that aircraft
Yeah, I
again.
mean, yeah, obviously we went back a couple of years later and it wasn't there, so I'm not sure if it's based elsewhere or if it was out flying at the time, but I haven't seen it since. No.
Yeah, man, that definitely classifies as the rarest aircraft. That's probably might be one of the the rarest aircraft that has ever been said on this show. So I think you might hold that title as probably spotting the rarest aircraft, and it's a little Cessna. So everybody out there bashing Cessnas, that is the rarest. I've never heard of one. I just had to Google one, and it was a Cessna.
Yeah, I mean, it was. We couldn't believe. We just thought it was maybe someone that had painted it in those colours. It was their own O2, and they'd painted it. We didn't actually realise that it was actually assigned to the Navy with an actual unit, and it was just parked in amongst all these other 172s, which is quite amazing, really.
Yeah. Maybe they just want to keep it incognito and stuff like that.
And I think that was probably the rarest plane I've photographed in the US. And I think the rarest plane I've photographed in the UK was one of the P3s that's assigned to, let me just see, I think it was the sneaky P3s.
The EP3s?
No, it was a P3 from VPU2. Yeah, so at the time, I think they were based in Hawaii, and it was a P3. It dropped into Mildenhall, and it's one of the P3s that has no serial number on the back.
Mm-hmm.
It just has a BU number on the front on the nose, and no serial number. So you couldn't even tell what airframe it was. And yeah, that's probably the rarest.
I actually got one of those VPU2 birds in Boise about a month and a half ago. However, because with the Navy starting to draw down the P3 operation, with the exception of the Reserve Squadron, the Totems, and then VQ1, I think that aircraft was reassigned to VQ1 as a bounce bird.
Okay.
Because they have a few bounce birds, and then they only operate the EP3. Those EP3s are Vietnam era aircraft. They don't want to bounce those aircraft.
Yeah, sure.
For a number of reasons. Even though the EP3 has eluded me in Boise 6 times, it has flown over my house, it has bounced when I'm at work, and I have yet to get a decent picture of an EP3 in Boise. 0-6 on the EP3 one day, but I looked at the register, the serial, and it came back VPU2, but it was under the call sign Deep Sea, which is VQ1, so it got reassigned to be a bouncer, but still it used to belong to that squadron, which is a very, very, like you said, sneaky squadron.
Yeah, to get one come through Mildenhall was quite rare. They tend to usually go through Largers in the Azores and go the southern route instead of into Europe, across Europe. So yeah, it was quite a good catch to get that.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully you thought of another spotting story, because let's hear another one, man.
So spotting story or just a story from when I did a feature for the mag again. We
just whatever you think would be so the listener would love.
Back in 2015, I did a little bit of work for the mag with Jamie Hunter, flying with the 352nd Special Ops Group or Special Ops Wing at RF Mildenhall on the MC-130J. So we flew a night or an evening training mission, out of Mildenhall over the East Coast, refueling CV-22s over the North Sea, around about 10,000 feet, so it's quite low over the water. At sunset in the middle of the summer, it was awesome. So we left Mildenhall about 8:30 in the evening, and it was one of the rare clear days in the UK that we get. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was about 32 degrees. We left Mildenhall, flew straight over to the East Coast, where we joined the air refueling track over the North Sea, where we waited for our 2 CV-22s to join us, and we refueled them for about half an hour, which we then broke formation. They went and did their thing, and we headed to Wales to the low fly Mach Loop.
Oh God! No way.
Yeah, so it was must have been probably 11 p.m. So it was dark. The pilots had their NVGs on, and I'll tell you, before we went to Mach Loop, we actually hit a tanker. So we went up and refueled off a tanker in the pitch black with lights out, obviously because of special ops. So we did MVG plug on a KC-135 over the North Sea. I had no MVGs at the time, so the 2 pilots had their MVGs on. The KC-135 had all their lights out, and you couldn't see anything. It was pitch black, and the loadmaster handed me a set of goggles, and he said, "Just put these on." So I put these goggles on and looked out the windscreen, and the KC-135 were literally just sat above us. You would just never know. It was incredible.
Holy crap.
But they do this training, these lights out, refuels, and radio silent as well, just because it's all part of their mission, special ops. So we did that for about half an hour, topped up some fuel, and then we went towards Wales, and we did about 2 hours of low-level flying around the loop in the middle of the night, probably down, I don't know how high we were, but we were low. I was in the cockpit looking down, you could just see the lights on houses flick by, on the ground. And yeah, we eventually landed back at Mildenhall about 3:30 in the morning. So yeah, we spent a whole evening, early morning, with the special ops guys, just showing us what they do, and just incredible, because it was all MVG.
That is,
for someone who didn't have MVGs in the cockpit, and you couldn't see anything, and they were doing low level flying around the hills in Wales, and yeah, it was awesome.
More than awesome. God, what was it like doing aerial refueling than being aerial refueled?
So when we were refueling the CV-22s, obviously we had the back door down. The loadmaster was sat with us. They send out the drogues off the wings, and basically the Osprey does all the work. So they will guide their refueling probe into the basket. So the MC-130 doesn't have to do much. It just stays on its track and lets the Osprey come up to the basket. When the roles are reversed and we're refueling off the tanker, the amount of work that the pilots were doing coming up to the boom was quite amazing. It's basically like a controlled crash, if you like, because you've got 2 aeroplanes that are attached in midair, and coming up to the boom. The boom is sometimes only 5-10 feet away from the windscreen, and the pilot is keeping it so steady, as steady as he can, and then you can hear the boom plug into your receptacle with a big thud, and then you're attached. And once you're attached, it's kind of simple. The pilots can just stay steady, and the boom operator does their thing. But yeah, it's just such an art, seeing it for real. And I have been on the other side of it as well, in a KC-135, refueling certain aircraft, and seeing it from that side of it as well. It's amazing. The skill involved is superb. It's
Yeah.
I've I flew out of Travis at one point on a KC-10, which I said earlier, and we refueled a C5, and refueling a C5 was like nothing that I've refueled before, because the sheer size of it, and it creates such a bow wave in front of the aircraft that you can feel it pushing the KC-10 away from it. Boom operators, they don't really enjoy plugging C5s because of that reason. But seeing such a huge aircraft behind you, or behind the KC-10, from the boom window, is just amazing. It's incredible, really.
That's hopefully I'll be able to do something like that one day. But how was going through the Mach Loop at night?
It was in the cockpit. You're fine, because it's you're turning, and you're quite low, and you can pull a little bit of G. I'm not sure how many G you pull, but around the tight turns you can. But if you're in the back, it's really disorientating. Because you can't. You've got nothing to focus your eyes on. You're facing a different direction. But there was a point where we came around one of the hills towards the end of the mission, and I was just standing behind the co-pilot and looking out the window, and then all of a sudden look up front through the windscreen, and all I could see was like a wall of white, and it was thick fog. So we came around this hill, and all of a sudden there's just a wall of fog, and the pilot just pulled back on the stick, and we just climbed, and we sort of decided to head home. But that was quite scary, because you come around, and at the time there was a full moon at the time, so your eyes could adjust looking out the window, and you could see the shapes of the hills either side of you, and then you just see this wall of fog, and it approaches really quickly. From the moment you see it, it's like bang. Okay, the pilot was pulling back on the stick, and we were heading back. But yeah, it was really impressive to see it. I couldn't really gauge how low we were, obviously, because it was dark. I imagine during the day it'd have been a bit more fun flying that low, turning and burning around the hills.
Yeah, but still, you gotta fly through the infamous Mach Loop, so you can actually say I've flown through the Mach Loop.
Yeah, there is that, I guess. Yeah.
Speaking of the Mach Loop, have you ever been out there to go shoot the jets when they used to fly low level through there?
I've been a couple of times. It's about a 4.5 hour journey for me, so it's quite a way. It's 4.5 hours there and 4.5 hours back, so it's a long way for me to go, to sit on a hill and not get anything, and a wasted journey.
Yeah.
But no, I did go. I think it was about a year before the Tornado retired. I went with a mate, and we went up one of the hills, and we only got one tornado come through, but it was a Tornado low level, so I'll take that. I'll take that over nothing. And then I think my first time was in 2005 when I went, and I think we saw a Harrier and 2 Jaguars come through low level, which was pretty cool. Yeah, back then Jaguars were quite active. Obviously they're no longer. They got retired in 06, I think it was, or 07. But yeah, the Harriers and the Jags, I think they just love low level. They were, according to a lot of low level photographers, they were the lowest through the loop. They just loved it.
That must have been really cool to see.
It was pretty good.
Well, yeah, man, let's start wrapping her up. So, do you have any tips, words of encouragement, or anything else for the listeners out there you like to share?
Just keep doing what you're doing. If you enjoy it, just carry on doing it. The hobby as a whole is getting more and more popular. So obviously, just don't let that put you off. There being hundreds and hundreds of people there. Just go and do your thing, enjoy it, and be yourself. Just enjoy.
Yeah, that's simple, but that's some pretty powerful words. Just be yourself. Be be humble, be kind, and just be nice to other people out there too, because it can pay dividends in the future. Like, you don't know who you're going to be talking to.
Exactly, and that, I've met a lot of my buddies. I've met through the hobby, like through just going to air bases. 15 years ago when I went to RF Cultural for the Jaguars and Mildenhall, I met most of my good friends there, and we've it creates friendships. Just enjoy
really
it and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can the listener out there find your work? So we know that we can find you in combat aircraft. What about a Flickr, Instagram, or any other media sites that you have? Where can people see your aviation stuff?
I've got an Instagram account, which is Ashley Wallace Photography, and I've also got a website which is www.ashleywallacephotography.com. On there you'll find most of my magazine features that I've written for combat aircraft, a collection of all my aviation images, and then a selection of other photography as well. So I've got a wildlife, I've got landscapes, astro, everything's on there, and a blog as well. So I try and keep that updated when I can. And I do have a Flickr as well, which is just Ashley Wallace.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely go give you a follow on Flickr here
Thanks,
shortly.
Man, I appreciate it.
I am on there as well, so absolutely. And yeah, man, I can't thank you enough. I know it's been a process to try and get you on here, just our schedules to line up. It took us a couple of weeks to get this ready to go, but I am so glad we got this worked out. This was a great discussion, a great talk. You're a very interesting guy, and I hope the listener enjoyed this interview as much as I did.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So I know it's getting late for you there. It's almost 3 p.m. here in the state of Idaho, so it's getting, 10 o'clock for you over there in England right now? 10
p.m. here in the evening, getting a bit late.
Well, hey, man, I'll let you get to bed here shortly, but anything else to add before we end the talk?
Thanks very much for having me on, and hope everyone's enjoyed it. Great, thanks very much.
Awesome, man. Absolutely, man. All right. All right, guys. That was a pretty awesome interview, don't you agree? I just think the story about him being in Qatar at Al Udeid with the B-1s and going up in a running B-1 5 minutes before a combat launch is absolutely insane. Man. Well, you guys need to go check his stuff out. Go check out his blog. Go check out his website. Seriously, give him some traffic. He is an awesome, awesome photographer, and he's an even more awesome person to talk to. We talked for almost a solid hour after the interview was done. And this is the part of the podcast where I always say, if you know someone that wants to come on and talk aviation, or you think you know somebody that should come on and talk aviation with me, you know the drill. Send me an email, avspotterspodcast@gmail.com. Send me a DM on Twitter @BOISpotter. And send me a DM on Instagram @BOISpotter. Send us a message on Facebook, the Aviation Spotters Podcast. And also, speaking of Facebook, please go check us out, like, follow, and all that good stuff. I've hit some snags with the YouTube page. Hopefully we'll get that there soon. But please, please, please share this with your network. Share them with any people that you think would like this sort of stuff. It would really, really help me out. We have a lot of exciting plans here for the next couple of weeks and a couple of months. There may be some stickers coming on, so who knows? I might be doing a sticker give out here once I get these guys ready to go. If you guys do, maybe I might start sharing them with you guys. But you guys need to help me out. Share it out. Tell everybody about this. So anyway, guys, That's it for me here on another episode of the Aviation Spotters podcast. We'll catch you guys in the next 2 weeks' time. As always, keep those cameras ready, those batteries charged, and we'll catch you next time here on another episode of the Aviation Spotters podcast.